Beep, 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 beep. Morning all. Hello. Aha. Okay, so thank you all so much, first of all, for the terribly kind comments about my conversation with the marvellous, wonderful, silken and honeyed-voiced Benjamin Boyce. Conversations. Right, okay, that was great. I really enjoyed it. It's fantastic to talk to Benjamin. So if you haven't seen it yet, I'll put the link in the doobers so you can. Right now, if you want to be a warrior teacher, usual, contacts are down there. Come and be a warrior teacher, because that's exactly what it's like it was with Ben. Right? It's great fun. The things we talk about. But anyway, that's really good news. So that's great. Loved it. Now, buy me a coffee, join me Substack, the usual. What have we got today? Now, right, they're at it again with the kids, right? Why can't they just leave the kids alone? These people, they're all bloody weirdos. Right, so here, this is the Telegraph today, all right? Okay, sent to me by a warrior teacher. This is more about the PSHE, is it? Or whatever they call it. I just call it shite. PSHE, masturbation lessons and 100 genders. What are children being taught at school? Why are prepubescent pupils learning about rough sex and preferred pronouns in secret? It's a very good question. But there's something that leaps out of this. We'll come to it, all right? So let's just go through it again, because I think this has to be... We have to keep up the pressure here. Not the rhythm. So it begins with a question. What is going on in relationships and sex education lessons in schools? This is a very good question to ask at the moment. This week, MPs have raised the alarm about the volume of messages they are receiving from concerned parents who say they don't know where else to turn. It's like sleeping with a bisexual. Stop it. Right. Conservative MP Miriam Cates, who you'll be familiar with, great work being done in this arena, presented Prime Minister Rishi Sunak with a dossier of evidence on the nature and extent of indoctrination in relationship and sex education, RSE, in UK classrooms. Case studies are in there, okay, of materials designed for teachers which state that gender is fluid as a fact, or include teaching that many parents consider is age inappropriate. In some schools, children as young as 12 have been asked in lessons what they feel, this is important, what they feel about oral and anal sex. Indifferent, I hope. My 13-year-old was taught that there are 100 genders, says one mother, at a school in East Anglia. At what age my children have been taught at that age, my children have been taught accepted terminology such as cisgender, doesn't exist, non-binary, doesn't exist, and gender fluid, that's just a gender bender. With no suggestion that many people would find these terms and this ideology contrary to their beliefs, religious or otherwise. So this is a direct result of government fumbling. Not in that way. God, why is it Jesterites who've got filthy minds, right? Of government fumbling. Where they put out their sort of guidance for this PSHE stuff without making it clear that they need to keep the crap out of it. It's their own fault. That comes up, right? So another mother of a child at the London State School says her child was taught about masturbation in their last year of primary school by teachers she barely knew. Teachers she barely knew. That's interesting. I wonder if it was actually teachers or somebody come in from the outside. She became concerned after teachers told parents that during the RSE lessons, what happens in the room stays in the room. Now this is interesting, right? And I'll tell you why it's interesting. Because I use that word every other day. I use that statement every other day. What's said in the training room stays in the training room. Okay? Now, you may have heard this term. You've been on a Zoom call or you've been present, perhaps at some training about leadership or sales or whatever it is you do in your workplace. What's said in the training room stays in the training room. This resonated with me this morning and I wanted to share my thoughts about it with you. What happens in the room stays in the room, she said. And then I have a teaching background and I said, that's what paedophiles say. Well, actually... It might well be, but it's also what every corporate or adult learner in the country says, adult teacher in the country says regularly. And I'll tell you for why. So let's say I go, to train somebody in a large organisation and there's 8 of them in the room and we're talking about leadership skills. I'll say at the beginning of the session, right, that this is the session is run under what's called Chatham House rules, which is what's, you never ascribe anything to anyone. So you can talk about the training, but you can't say Barry said or Miriam said or, whatever, right? But you also then have a situation where you say what's said in the training room stays in the training room. And the reason you do that is because as somebody who's often involved in an organisation with training and organisational development, you want people to tell you the truth. And if they think you're going to go telling tales outside school, they won't be honest with you about, for example, right, this manager is very good in many ways, but they're also awful at this. Or this has caused us serious problems on the factory floor. Do you get it? Right? So it means it's the ability to have an open discussion in an adult situation, in a training room, in a corporate environment, or in a business environment, or whatever it may be. Who's doing this training then? Wouldn't be people who are in the corporate training field, would it? Wouldn't be people who haven't got a background in actually teaching children in pedagogy. It wouldn't be people that have a PGCE perhaps, or understand what andragogy and heutagogy are, would it? No, it wouldn't. It bloody wouldn't. What happens in the room stays in the room. That's why it makes it sound just a parent, like, who'd lie to my child like that? They don't see the distinction between adult and children. Gosh, could it be they're queer theorists? Yes. Yes, it's because they are queer theorists. Judith Butler, to break down the barrier between adult and child. But it's not for sexual purposes. I've said it before. It's not really. This is about sex. But they're doing it in order to break down the idea of the child altogether. So, what happens in the room stays in the room, she said. I have a teaching background, and I said that's what paedophiles say. Then there was this whole discussion. They had cards on the table discussing whatever was on the cards, and one of them said masturbation. Lots of parents were saying, you might frighten my child talking about this because they are 10. Who wants their child sitting with another person's son or daughter discussing this, let alone adults? Well, I'm absolutely right, but, you know. Mrs. Cates is among MPs calling for an urgent inquiry into sex education in schools. For the last year and a half, I've been working on this, and it's become more and more clear how inappropriate these materials are. So the new Social Covenant Unit, a think tank Mrs. Cates co-founded in 2022, I've written to them, is preparing to publish the study presented to Mr. Sunak, which states that the nation's children are being put at risk by teachers with a radical ideological position on sex, gender and sexuality who are monopolising the RSE sector in the UK. I've got a feeling some of them aren't teachers. Right? And we'll also at some point have to look and see if they're getting a backhander off these companies. It's like, you get us in the school, we'll give you 10%. That's what we do in business, but schools aren't business. Right? In business, you do that sort of thing. You go, right, listen, I'll give you a referral fee for that. So you get a contract for 10 grand and they give you a grand referral fee. Schools aren't that. Corporatization. So, they say that these groups are monopolising the RSE sector, and I agree with them, they probably are monopolising it. The proliferation of contentious and sexually explicit content can be traced back to 2019, when the Department for Education published the new statutory guidance on RSE. What was interesting about that particular publication was, it wasn't quite so didactic, and by that I mean it wasn't quite so you will do. It was much more open. It was actually very much about trying to get a consensus. Damien Hines, then Education Secretary, wrote in the foreword to the guidance that the department's guiding principles have been all of the compulsory subject content must be age appropriate and developmentally appropriate. However, the boundaries it set were more vague than the government's early guidance, dating back to 2000, which had stated that the promotion of sexual orientation or sexual activity would be inappropriate teaching. Now that's interesting because that's where the rubber hits the road. Listen, the promotion of sexual orientation or sexual activity would be inappropriate teaching. Interesting. There's a difference, isn't there? That's what we've got to get our heads around. What do we want kids to know, right? There's a difference between this is what happens, people do this, next, and here's how you do it. One's teaching, the other's training. Are we sure these queer theorists and gender ideologues that are in front of your kids are not from the corporate environment? Are we sure they're not from people who've had, illustrious careers teaching about, how to deal with change? How to manage your team? Are we sure? We sure? Corporatism. So, because the boundaries are so vague, you've allowed these practices. That's what it is, practice. They're practicing it. They're not teaching it, they're practicing it. Practices of queer theory and gender identity ideology and any other nonsense. They'll be doing critical race theory as well. If they're doing those two, they're doing the other ones. We're so vague that the wedge was open. I mean, these people have managed to get in. Now, Mark Lehane, a former head teacher and DFE special advisor, says the new document was a masterclass in consensus building. Here we go. What have I said before in terms of my fears and concerns regarding the both-sidism of this particular infection? A masterclass in consensus building, but it gave schools a minimum requirement of what to teach without giving teachers a ceiling. Schools also found that there were limited teaching resources available. That's how they got in. This has created an opening for activist groups to fill the gap. Organisations including Stonewall, the LGBTQ plus charities, not charity, it's a lobby group, began working with hundreds of schools on how to map out an LGBT inclusive approach to RSE. The new Social Covenant Unit report highlights other RSE resource providers, including the School of Sexuality Education. Just, why do these people bugger off and die? Right. Which is understood to have worked with more than 300 schools and states it has a sex-positive approach, both in classroom and in general. Wait for it. The charity's workshop facilitators included Dr. Emma Chan, who, on a personal blog, has published a video of herself singing a song called Let's All Masturbate. I've got to find it and put a link in, right? I'll put the link in the doobie. Let's All Masturbate, followed by a link to an article that advises readers how to do so. Okay, let's just deal with that Emma Chan for a minute, right? So she's coming into school, teaching the kids. Go and look at my website. Here's a video. Let's all masturbate. I don't know why I think it's that tune. Dun, 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 dun. I don't know why I think it's that tune. But she's singing Let's All Masturbate and going, what does she think people are? Does she think there's an absence of masturbation in the world? I mean, I can think of nothing else that needs no promotion whatsoever than masturbation. And the next thing you know, if you're going into work, there'll be a poster saying, have you had a wank today? Remember, if you spray it, you can say it. You'll have a whole PR campaign run by this Dr. Emma Chan. I mean, for goodness sake. So she go to the kids and let's all masturbate. They have a sex positive. Really, is that right? Is it sex positive? It shouldn't be sex positive. It shouldn't be sex negative either. It should just be about it. They're not teaching. They're proselytising, and they're proselytising queer theory and gender identity ideology in the classroom. The poor children, can you imagine? I mean, what detail are they going into? You know? She thinks humans are bonobos. You know the chimps that every time they meet, they diddle each other's wanglers? Have you ever heard of them? They do. So you come across another bonobo, and you don't sort of go, hello, how you doing? Kiss either cheek. You grab their, say, morning. How are you? Everything all right, missus? She thinks humans are bonobos. You lunatic, right? You imagine the kids have had that lesson and they go home and they get inside the door and they go, and mum says, hello, what do you want for tea? We've got sausages and onion rings. And the kid goes, Dr. Emma Chan, you're a nutter. You do not teach people how to masturbate. It's built in, all right, okay? It's like seeing or breathing. Can you imagine if you went in at 8 years old and today's lesson will be about how to sniff? Right, today we're going to teach you how to have a dump. They're lunatics. They're lunatics. Practicing queer theory and gender ideology, proselytising in the classroom to kids as young as 10. Get them out. If they as an individual were going in and just giving straightforward lessons about here's what this means, here's what this means, here's what this means, anyone for a game of rounders, then I wouldn't have a problem with them and nor with the parents. And we have to draw the line because if we're not careful, we're going to do baby in bathwater. That's the concern, is right? We've got to get this right. It's where the rubber hits the road and people need to have the information. But it should be factual and cold. Not sex positive. I mean, for sex positive, can you imagine? You know, the worry is they get in there and they're talking about sex positivity with kids and... yeah, let's not go down there. Ooh, no, just don't. It's all a bit Geoffrey Marsh in it. Hello, I am your fairy godmother. It's all a bit, Geoffrey Marsh in it. No, let's not go there. Let's all masturbate. I can't believe it. I'd have to find it. Right, Nadia Dean, a workshop facilitator for the School of Sexuality Education, uses the charity to advertise her own sex education website, which includes articles on anal fun and frolics. What a load of bollocks. And the problem with heteronormativity. Here we go. Keep your kids home, regardless of what the law says. Keep your kids home. Pay the price. Keep your kids home, okay? A book used by teachers in schools that the charity promotes on its website, Great Relationship and Sex Education, advises teachers to emphasise that love and affection are often more important parts of good sex, but not always. For others, good sex is quick, rough, and anonymous. They don't need any of this, right? They don't need any of this because they're not going to be doing it for years, right? Like, you know, they might be having the odd fiddle behind the bike shed, but that's all. You know, they might be sort of showing each other, you know, I'll show you yours if you show you mine. Or when I used to do that years ago with a girl, I'd show her mine and then she'd run off. Most unfair, right? So you're doing that sort of exploratory thing, that's fine. Then when they get older as teenagers, they don't need you to tell them. Stop doing it, all right? Okay, excuse me, I'd just like to interrupt your burgeoning sex life and understanding. Let me talk to you about anal stimulation. It's like, they're weird. They're like sex inspectors, you know? There you are, you're 16 years old, you're out on your first date with your girlfriend, and all of a sudden you've had dinner, you're going home, you know, the game's on, something lovely going to happen between the two of you that would be very normal and very human to do so. And all of a sudden there's a knock on the door. Hello. We're the sex inspectors, and we've come to help you with your first foray into poking muff. I just don't. Go away, you weirdos. When a chief executive of Multi-Academy Trust was presented the evidence, she defended the organisation and then said that she had agreed not to share the lesson plan with parents. Doing it in secret, eh? Practising and proselytising gender identity, ideology and queer theory in the schools. Get your kids out. Now, the spokesman for the School of Sexuality Education said, "We find the politicisation of relationships and sex education very concerning." Yeah, I bet you do. What that means is, you've caught us, the jig is up, I better come up with an excuse. They politicised it. They've made it a cultural and political football. We will continue to provide high quality, inclusive, age-appropriate RSE in line with the government's guidance, which is fluffy at best. And young people's rights. We're not talking about young people, you're talking about children. You know, you're pushing it with young people at 13, right? But 10-year-olds? Young people? Right, okay. The agendas of external groups appear to have influenced teaching materials prepared by teachers and local authorities. It certainly has. An RSE education programme drawn up for schools by Swindon Borough Council last year includes a demonstration of dams or flavoured latex to prevent the spread of STIs during oral sex and promotes masturbation as a way of expressing themselves sexually. To whom? Who exactly do they think they're going to be expressing themselves sexually? Do they mean express as in, you know, express as in push out? Or do they mean express as, what do they mean? Express as in, or do they mean express to others? And promotes masturbation of expressing themselves sexually. To whom? Weirdos. Case studies to be used as a discussion point for year 11 pupils, and that's children aged between 15 and 16. Include her in a situation where a boy wants to take his relationship to the next level by creating a video of him and his partner having sex. Yeah, probably not a good idea, kids. Not unless you've been told don't bloody share it and that you're both 16 and within the law. Okay? That's a good... Hang on a few months, you know? Other popular RSE resources providers include Pop and Ollie. Oh, we've heard about you before, haven't we? Pop and Ollie. A company which provides LGBT educational resources to primary schools. They don't. What they provide is LGBTQ plus hands, bumps and daisy propaganda. Any school, come to me, give me the stuff. I tell you within a couple of hours or so, or half a day, you know, take this out, take that, just take this out, take this out. Why don't they just show a beautiful thing, you know, or get real, or something about, that's what, you know, if you're teaching about gay people and gay sex, why don't you just show that? Just show that. And if you're teaching about, you know, AGPs, show them Dressed to Kill. Or Science on Labs. Puts the lotion on its skin or it gets the hose again. Right. Nick Fletcher, the Conservative MP for the Don Valley, we like Nick, warned the Prime Minister in the House of Commons that schools are spending money on materials by organisations that are educating our boys and girls that they may not have been born in the right body or have an inner gender identity. There's no such thing as gender identity. It doesn't exist. That's how you start your PSAG lesson. Doesn't exist. And then you tell them why. Tell them about John Money. Tell them about the Reimer twins. Show them pictures of sausage tubes created out of arm flesh. Show them pictures of despoiled and damaged vaginas and penises. That's what you do. You frighten the shit out of them. Exactly the same as you would show them the Holodomor or the Holocaust. You show them the damage that can be caused by human beings who are taken by a righteousness that makes them believe they are right. That's what you do. Schools are stuck between activists and the guidance. No, they're not. They're not, all right? The head of every school is a fucking head teacher. Oh, I swore. Is a head teacher, right? Grow a pair. Whatever you want to do, just do something, okay? I know it's hard. The schools are in a particularly difficult position. The equality duty requires schools to be activists in the classroom. And that does not fit with anti-discrimination laws. The equality duty does not require... that's an interesting one. Most head teachers probably don't understand the law. I'll go with that. Meanwhile, parents are faced with a battle. James Esses gets a mention from Thoughtful Therapists. Listen, I'm going to put this into the doobers. There's so much of it. Essentially, they're pushing a mental health condition. They're proselytising in the classroom, and it's got to stop. I've written to these folks. Let's see if I get a response, okay? Because it looks to me like they're trying to do some good. And what I don't want to do is end up throwing the baby out with the bathwater, because it's important that young people get the correct education in PSHE. But it's not important that we're allowing people to proselytise and to say, you will be X, you will be Y, or let's all masturbate. Let's all masturbate. Get in the bin. You imagine how long it would take a meeting if we did it. Morning. No, right, okay, it's all nonsense of the first order, but it's not just about sex. Remember that. It's about breaking down the boundaries. It's about bringing this thought process into schools. It's about indoctrinating your children. Get your kids out, pay the price. Get your kids out and pay the price. Let the school go mad. Let them call whoever it is that makes it unlawful to do it. You might have to do so. Mass no. That's what we need. A mass no. Anyway, going to do things. Thank you so much, everybody. It's great to have talked to you. Keep gesturing.